Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. On today's episode, I am sitting down with an amazing man who was wrongfully convicted of a crime he did not commit and spent years behind bars. He has since been released when they found him obviously not guilty, and he has been immersing himself into the criminal justice system to make changes that are so badly needed. So he is here to share his story. If you listened to last week's podcast, we had a documentary filmmaker on Gia Wertz who was talking about her film Conviction, available on Amazon. And our guest today is actually the subject of that film. So with that being said, I want to welcome my guest, Jeffrey Deskovic. How are you?
I'm feel good. Psyched to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you and to have you share kind of your story. So I kind of want to start at the beginning. So when you were in high school, you were a quiet, kind of kept to yourself kid, and a girl, was she in the high school that was murdered?
Yes, she was a classmate in two of my classes as a freshman. One as a sophomore. I knew her name. She knew mine. That was the extent that we weren't even a high by basis.
Okay. And so take us back kind of to the day that your life changed forever.
Sure. So that would have been January 27th, 1990. Location is Peekskill, New York, Westchester County. Think suburbs, think middle class, think ethnically diverse. Peekskill is a city approximately 25,000 people. So murders were pretty rare. There hadn't been a murder there in approximately 20 years. And suddenly, she went missing in a couple of days, and that was on November 15th, 1989, she went missing. Her body was found a couple of days after that, and it set the whole city essentially stopped. I mean, parents were dropping their kids off at school and coming right to the high school and bringing them home. There were town hall meetings. There were safety protocols. There was tons of rumors abound, and parents were concerned with their own safety as well as the safety of their children.
Right.
I got on the police radar for three factors. So firstly, the police interviewed a lot of students in the high school, and some of them told the police they might want to talk to me because I was quiet. I didn't quite fit in socially. So that was one reason. A second thing is that was really my first brush with death. And I did react emotionally to that. I did have a chance to meet the victim's family, and I even saw her bedroom, which they had left in the same exact condition as it was the last time she was there. And I had, like many people in the city, I went to the wake multiple times. I went to the burial. There was a general inviting everybody that wanted to come back to the house to have coffee and talk and meet with the family. And so I went, and so I saw her bedroom that way, and it kind of really brought things home more and made it like even more real. And I had an emotional reaction to that. And the police interpreted my being a sensitive teenager as a outward sign that I was sorry for something that I had done.
Wow.
A reinforcing factor was that they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of what the perpetrator would be like, and I had the misfortune of matching that. And so you might say that was kind of a reinforcing factor.
Oh my gosh. And so well, I don't want to kind of give it away, but so what happened was they then pull you into the case, right?
Yeah, correct.
To help with.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So I'll explain. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So what happened? That was how I got on their radar, and so they kind of pulled me into the case by telling me that. So they were doing the good cop, bad cop routine, and one of the officers was pretending to be my friend, and that intersected with the my background, where my father was never involved in my life in any way, and I began to look up to the officer pretending to be my friend as a father figure.
Okay.
Before I was a teenager, I wanted to be a cop.
Yeah.
So this unexpected early opportunity to do this quasi police work was how the police were able to pull the wool over my eyes, as to the absurdity that a 16-year-old would be able to help them in a active homicide investigation. So half the time they would talk to me like I was a suspect, and the other half the time they would pretend like they needed my help to solve the crime. So they would say things like, "Well, the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time." They would ask me opinion questions and congratulate me on my opinions being correct. So they did that for about 6 weeks. This was all going on without my mother knowing what was going on.
Hmm.
Um, so eventually, they got me to agree to take a lie detector test, and they told me that some new information came into their file, and if I took the test and passed, then they'd be able to share that information with me. And then, that portion of the time when I interacted with them, keeping in mind that each time I interacted with them, half of the conversation they would focus in on me like I was a suspect. And then when they would push too hard, or I would start to become frightened because of that, that's when they would, Jeff is the junior and detective helper mode kicked in. And that was how they kept me off balance and kept me in contact with them. So I agreed to take the test on that, and so I went to the police station for the test on a school day. So my mother and grandmother thought I was in school, and they drove me instead to the town of to Brewster, which was in Putnam County, so across county lines, about 40 minutes away by car. So I had no idea of where I was. I had no independent way of leaving. There were three cops that came with me from Peekskill, but then the polygraphist was a Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, Daniel Stevens, and he was dressed as a civilian, and he never revealed himself to be a police officer. They gave me 4-page brochure about how the polygraph worked, but it had a lot of big words in it that I didn't understand. But then I thought, well, I'm there to help the police, so what does it matter? Let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
So from there, they put me in a small room, and he gave me countless cups of coffee. Seems pretty clear he did that in order to wire me up and get me nervous. I wasn't given anything to eat the entire time that I was there, and I didn't have an attorney present. From there, he attached the polygraph machine to me, and he launched into his third-degree tactics. So he invaded my personal space. He raised his voice at me. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again, and I was really frightened. I mean, each hour that passed, my fear increased in proportion to the time. And that was also amplified by the fact that my father had never been in my life in any way. And so I was not used to talking to adult male figures, much less somebody acting as ferocious as he was.
Right.
And he kept that up for about 6.5 to 7 hours.
And you're drinking
And
coffee the
eventually,
whole time and just totally.
no, 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 no. I had the coffee at the beginning. He gave
Okay.
me a lot of coffee and then after the coffee, there was no more coffee. He dispensed with that quasi friendliness and just was in like his attack mode.
Oh my gosh.
And so eventually he told me, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told us through the polygraph test result that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." And so that really shot my fear through the roof. And then the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and told me, "Look, these other cops are going to harm you. I've been holding them off, but I can't do that anymore. You have to help yourself. Look, just tell them what they want to hear. They'll stop what they're doing. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested." Being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, overwhelmed emotionally and psychologically. I was not thinking about the long term. I was only concerned with my safety in the moment. I mean, I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was and that nobody else knew where I was either loomed very large in my mind.
Yeah.
And then there was this threat and false promise. And so I decided to make up a story based on the information that they had given to me in the course of that interrogation in the 6 weeks run up to it. By the time everything was all said and done, I had collapsed onto the floor. I was curled up into a fetal position, and I was crying uncontrollably. And obviously, I was arrested.
And so you were sent to prison that evening.
Well, I was sent to the county jail, not to prison. I was sent to the county jail. Yes. So after about 35 days, I got bailed out. The local businessman who had bailed me out, who's a close family friend, uh, he got a lot of bad publicity over the fact that he bailed me out. His business actually suffered as a result of that. And at some point after that, the results of a DNA test came out from the FBI lab, which showed that semen found in the victim didn't match me. It's like hair on the body was identified as having come from um, uh, people of somebody of Negroid ethnicity and also Mongoloid, which obviously I'm Caucasian.
Right.
So that's when the that's when the following misconduct, additional misconduct happened. So first of all, the police, my interrogation was not videotaped and it wasn't audio taped. There was no signed confession. It was just their word for it. And so, when they came to court to testify, they left the threat and false promise out of the story. But they fabricated a statement also and attributed it to me. They claimed that I said to them that I didn't know if the perpetrator ejaculated or not. So that word wasn't in my vocabulary at the time, that being 16. And that statement does not appear in any of their police reports, what they wrote up about the confession, their notes. It didn't appear until after the DNA didn't match me. So they made that up specifically to help the prosecutor get around the negative DNA test result.
What do you think their motive was to withhold this information or lie? The DNA doesn't match. Why did this not end right there?
It really should have, but I think that they didn't want what they did to. They didn't. I think they didn't want to come under scrutiny. I
No.
mean, if they had dropped the case, I mean, obviously there would have been an inquiry. Well, like, what the hell did you do to him in the course of the interrogation that caused him to falsely confess? Did you do something improper? I think that was part of it, and there was a lot of public pressure on the police and the district attorney. So I think that they wanted to satisfy the public that they had, caught the actual perpetrator, even if they knew in reality that they had not, just that they had someone that they could point to. So that was the police misconduct with respect to that. But it wasn't only them. The prosecutor engaged in misconduct. So he got the medical examiner to claim also that he forgot to document medical evidence that he said showed the victim had been sexually active. So he didn't. He only came up with that after the DNA didn't match me, and that fabrication allowed the prosecutor to argue that the DNA not matching me didn't prove I was innocent. It must have come from yet another person that she had slept with in the course of her being
Oh,
promiscuous.
you've got to be kidding me.
No, that's what happened. Taking it a step further, he mentioned another kid from the school by name that he claimed had slept with the victim, but he never had a DNA test performed to prove that. He didn't call him as a witness. He just made the unsupported argument to the jury, just like he argued to the jury that he claimed that all those hairs must have belonged to the medical examiner and the medical examiner's assistant. But he never actually gave the hair samples to the hair expert so that the testing could be done. He just argued by inference without setting the proper evidentiary foundation.
So when you were bailed out, when all this was happening, were you out of jail at this point on bail?
I was for a few weeks, but then my life, I thought when I had gotten bailed out, I was going back to my life. I thought that I'd be going back to the high school. I could play with my friends, and there was, the school wouldn't let me go back. None of the parents of the other children would allow them to play with me, and I was a hated figure within the city of Peekskill. My life essentially ended as I knew it, and that that was all too much for me, and so I made a suicide attempt. I took a full bottle of extra strength Tylenol, and I went to sleep, and I intended to never wake up again. And you know, unfortunately, I did, and my stomach got pumped. But that whole suicide attempt resulted in my being involuntarily committed for 6 months in a mental health facility.
So you go to the mental health for 6 months, and when you're
Yes.
out of there,
Hmm.
what
Yeah, at
happened?
some point, so then I went to live with my aunt and uncle, and because the court insisted that I not go back to Peekskill, not go back to the county, that I had to go someplace else. So I went to live with my aunt and uncle in Rockland County, and at some point after that, I turned 17, and then the trial commenced. And at the trial, my public defender essentially did not defend me. He never interviewed my alibi witness or call him. Um, he never explained to the jury what the significance of the DNA not matching me meant. He didn't use that to argue that it proved that the confession was coerced and false.
Oh my gosh.
He did not attempt to discredit the medical examiner on his fraud, coming up with that finding after 6 months after doing the autopsy. He rarely met with me. He refused to allow my mother or any other adult male to be in on any of the conversations when we were discussing strategic things about such as whether I should testify or not. I was totally in over my head, and I wanted to have an adult in those conversations to fully understand the implications, pro and con, but he wouldn't allow that,
Oh,
and so then another thing was, I wanted to, he should have not represented me because the conflict of interest that this other youth that the prosecutor was falsely saying had slept with the victim, he was represented by another member of Westchester County Legal Aid. And so that conflict prevented the defense from calling him. It prevented the defense from asking him to supply a DNA sample. I want to also say that he rarely met with me. And lastly, I wanted to testify at the pre-trial hearing so that I could tell the judge about the threats and the false promise, but he wouldn't allow me to testify there. He said, well, I haven't decided if you're going to take the stand at the trial. And so in the event that you do take the stand at the trial, if you don't tell the story in exactly the same way, the prosecutor could make it look like you're lying, even if you were not. But
oh,
that didn't really make much sense because if the judge believed me, then the statements would not have been admissible because they would have been involuntary and considered unreliable.
right.
And secondly, if it didn't go well when I testified, I didn't have to take the stand at the trial. And if I didn't, there would be no way that that my testimony could be used. But when I got to the trial, he would not allow me to testify there either. He told me that it wasn't up to him to prove that I was innocent. It was up to the prosecutor to prove that I was guilty. And that might be a legal principle, but that's a very naive way to practice law. In reality, you have to try to prove your client innocent or they might be wrongfully convicted, particularly in a confession case where there's an 80% conviction rate and you have to answer that confession. You have to explain that confession. You have to disprove that confession as many different ways as you can.
Oh,
Or because the average person doesn't think an innocent person would falsely confess. So if you don't provide that narrative and explain, you're going to lose. But
yeah.
he didn't do that, and I was in fact wrongfully convicted, and I was given a 15 to life sentence because I had been charged as an adult, and I was therefore given an adult sentence and sent to an adult maximum security prison.
At 17 years old.
Yes.
So when the trial, they find you guilty, you go to jail. What is going through your head at this point? I mean, you had just been committed to a mental institution. You just recently got out of there. You wanted to end your life. Were those feelings and thoughts coming back again? They had to have
100%. Yes, they did, and I tried to kill myself a couple of times more.
been in jail.
Yes.
Oh my God. It's just such a painful, like, it's like I don't even there's like not even words sometimes to put around it. It's like how did you mentally get through? Because you spent what, 17 years?
I spent 16 years in prison. Let me add that, and then I'll come right to your question, that it wasn't just physically dangerous for me, being in a men's maximum security people with many people there who were guilty of violent crimes and being 17. And, what am I going to do against a fully formed adult? I've got this bullet on my back because I'm there for a sex offense. And there's a vigilante mentality towards people who've been convicted of sex offenses. And then it's not just the physical, but half the time I can't believe that I'm fully really that I'm there, that all this has happened. So I'm in a quasi state of disbelief. And I had to fight off feelings of, depression, suicidal ideation, thoughts of giving up. So it was a nonstop obstacle course featuring, the guards, the civilians, the other prisoners, and these mental things that I had to keep fighting off. It wasn't just, going against the district attorney's office and the 7 appeals that I filed, but it was those things too. Coming to your question as to how did I survive, right? I'll interpret your question that way. It was a package of things that were true at the same time. So definitely belief in God was one thing.
Okay.
A second thing was that I knew that nobody was coming to my rescue. So if I was going to get out of there, I was going to have to try to recruit somebody that I didn't know already to help be that champion to build the bridge between me and the legal professionals that I needed to work on my case. And so to do that, I had no choice but to keep it together mentally, because if otherwise I'd still be there. So that was part of it. Another thing was that I used to collect articles about other people who were exonerated, and I used that as a motivation to keep going. Another thing is uh, I had this elaborate delusion that I engaged in, with respect to like sports. When I would play basketball or chess or ping pong, I used to pretend like I was a professional player, and so was everyone else. And the people waiting for the next game, those are the fans. But it wasn't really like kids making pretend to play sports on a stand. This was a defense mechanism. I had to get out of the prison for a couple of hours, so I engaged in this elaborate delusion. I listened to sports talk radio, but it wasn't sports talk radio. It was a lifeline to the outside. You try to normalize the madness. You make pretend, like it's normal to be strip searched as the price of having a visit, or that making a phone call, yes, it's normal to have to call collect and have the people you're calling pay and absorb it in bill. And it's not the prison guard, it's the correction officer, it's not the warden of the prison, it's the superintendent. So all these things taking place at the same time. I used to, from 1997 to 2006, I used to read 3 or 4 nonfiction books each week. And that was in addition to going to the law library and learning the law and sending suggestions out. Gave me a sense of comfort. It made me feel empowering, because I didn't trust lawyers to defend me anymore by,
Yeah, I
by,
don't
by
blame you.
themselves. Right. So I did some of that as well. And the other thing I'll mention, I'll wrap my answer up, is so the uh, right at the nick of time. And I lost 7 appeals, and then I wrote letters for 4 years looking for someone to take my case pro bono, because I didn't have any money to hire one. When your appeals are over, the only way back into court is if you can find some new evidence. And so to do that, I had to find a lawyer, an investigator, and hope that they could find something new. And hence writing. I wrote hundreds of letters over the course of 4 years, rarely getting any kind of answer. And then I went to the parole board, and because I maintained my innocence, instead of taking responsibility and expressing remorse, I got turned down there also. Right in the nick of time, um, this pen pal arrived out of nowhere. I mean, I placed an ad in a Sacramento newspaper, and somebody wrote me back, and we wrote back and forth. I was at the end of my rope. I mean, I was openly asking him in the letters, do you think I should just quit? Should I just give up? Maybe I should just kill myself. What do you think? And so he helped me, morale wise. He was a crime victim, and he saw himself in the same position as me, in the sense that, he believed that I was innocent, and he saw me as a crime victim in a way. And so he showed up at the right time. And
Gosh.
um, then this letter I sent to this book author in care of the publishing company was not forwarded to her, but it was forwarded instead to an investigator, Claudia Whitman, and she wrote me back right away. And once I sent her the evidence that the DNA didn't match me, she was instantly convinced of my innocence.
Oh
And
God, thank God.
yes, and so she said, "Look, I'm going to try to help find a lawyer, an investigator for you." She brainstormed with me. She tried to get people to take my case, and
Yeah.
eventually, one of her ideas, she said, write the Innocence Project again. And I wrote them, and she lobbied them from outside the organization. She got other respected legal entities to do that. And then I got lucky that one of the intake workers there um, re- presented my case like 3 times to the lawyers before they finally agreed to take it. They said no a couple of times. So that's how I got their representation. So that was the
Oh
first
my gosh.
that was the first break I got. That was the most important thing. And secondly, the district attorney, Janine Perro, who took office before my first appeal was decided, she had fought me in all the appeals and blocked me from getting further DNA testing several times, the data bank. She left office. That was a second break. And the third thing is, we got lucky that the actual perpetrator, that he killed a second victim 3.5 years after killing the victim in my case, and he got caught for that. And so that resulted in his DNA being in the data bank, so that when I did get the testing, it matched him. And confronted with that, he admitted he was the person who committed the crime. So I was all of my charges were dismissed on actual innocence grounds, and he was arrested for and convicted for killing the victim in my case.
Oh my God. So, I mean, just the mental strength that you had to continuously write letters and reach out and not give up. And, obviously your faith in God helped you tremendously because
Yes,
you knew that, you had a purpose on this planet, which is why you were still there.
right.
Um, and so when the actual person that was guilty was arrested, were you immediately released that day?
Yeah, I was released before they arrested him. I was released the next. Yeah, my lawyer was told about the results, and then I was released the next day.
Oh my God. And where was your family this whole time? Did they kind of give up on you?
Well, it's it's kind of hard to put it in like a bouquet quick answer. I mean, I had several sets of aunts and uncles that came to see me, but they would come and disappear for 3 years and then show up and disappear for 3 years. My mother was the only consistent visitor, but in the last 6 years, I was lucky if I saw her once every 6 months. I have a brother that's 3.5 years younger than I am, and I saw him 3 times in the 16 years, and not at all in the last decade. So, in many ways, I really did the time essentially by myself.
Oh my. I mean, so you get out
Hmm.
and you're all of a sudden you're 16 years older.
Right.
You missed out on all those, the senior year, your college, first building your career, meeting somebody. How do you adjust back to the world? Because then you're just thrown out, basically.
Correct. It was very difficult. So technology had been different. So the cell phones, internet, GPS was different. The culture was certainly different. Cities and towns didn't look the same anymore. So those three things can combined, I felt like a fish out of water. I wasn't able to obtain gainful employment. They release you with nothing. So it was a very difficult existence financially. I mean, I got a job as a weekly columnist, but they only wanted one article a week. I was doing speaking engagements and making some money, but that's not a consistent form of income. So I lacked stability of housing. I bounced around a bunch, and then I was a couple of weeks from the homeless shelter. Mercy College, which gave me a scholarship to finish the bachelor's degree. So I had gotten the GED and the associates in a year towards the bachelor's before the funding was cut for college education for prisoners. So that made its way into one of the newspapers about me, like a human interest item. And so this Mercy College, they gave me a scholarship to finish the bachelor's. And when I lost the temporary housing, they intervened and allowed me to live on campus. So that was how I avoided the shelter. And from there, Human Development Services of Westchester, about 6 months later, they took me on as a client because I fit their criteria of people that they would rent apartments for, and I just had to pay 30% of whatever I made. So that was how I avoided the homeless shelter. There was, of course, the psychological after effects of my experience.
Yeah.
So it's normal for people to have post-traumatic stress disorder, panic attacks, anxiety, feeling of being frozen in time, feeling of processing things at a slower speed, fear on seeing law enforcement. So I had to deal with the after effects of my experience also. So about 6 weeks, I went to therapy, 4 hours a week for about 6 years in order to get to the point where, I am now. So I had all those things to deal with, and plus, as you alluded to, I had never lived alone before. I had never went shopping before. I never had to balance a budget or write checks, and so all those things made it a particularly difficult challenge for me.
So is your mom, was she still alive? Is she still alive?
Yes, she's still alive. Yeah.
So it wasn't an option to go live with her?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So what I mean is, I stayed 3 days with her, but by the time I had gotten out, she had moved to the country. She had moved to Cobleskill, actually, in New York. So it's very rural there. So um, bus service is door to door, and you have to ride an hour and a half to get to the train. So I
Okay.
didn't feel like there was any way for me to rebuild my life. So somebody sent me $100 to do like a train ticket, and I packed a little bit up after 3 days, and I went down to Peekskill, and my plan was to just stay with people until I could figure out how to have like a consistent place. I was determined, no matter what happened, I wasn't going to go back
Yeah.
up there because I didn't feel like I could rebuild my life there. I felt that if somebody was going to give me a break, he was going to be in the county where I grew up at, not in some place that had no connection to me at all whatsoever.
Right. And so how do you feel, did they welcome you with open arms, or were they a little kind of?
No, I feel like I feel like they welcomed me. I mean, people used to come up to me on the street and they would honk their horns as they drove by, and that all felt, very, very good. But, at the same time, in a lot of ways, I was still on my own. I mean, it's one thing to, wave to somebody or speak with them. It's something different to try to assist them in a way beyond that. So even within that, I was kind of by myself, and it was very lonely, frankly. I mean, I had long since lost track of all my, friends that I used to have, and it was very difficult, just socially as well.
And so are you
So,
angry at what
mhm.
happened?
What's that?
Are you angry?
I'm not angry because I want to enjoy my life as much as I can, and I don't think I can do that if I'm angry or bitter. I feel like I lost so much. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life? Another thing is that if I was angry or bitter, it's not like I would be affecting any of the people who were involved in what happened to me. I would really just be the only loser. So
Mhm.
I mentioned to you the difficulties, but I also want to mention that for about 5 years, I was an individual advocate. So I was doing the speaking and writing, and I was trading privacy for awareness. I was doing media interviews. I was meeting elected officials, and that energy that I would feel, I channel into my advocacy work. So that's my release valve.
Okay.
So I did start doing that, and I did get the bachelor's degree from Mercy College, and from there I was able to springboard. I wound up getting a master's degree from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. My thesis is on wrongful conviction causes and reform.
Wow.
uh,
Yeah.
after after about 5 years, I was financially compensated, and I used some of the money to start the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice. And our purpose is to free people. So we continue the policy work that I was doing before as an individual, but then help to get people out, and that was something I couldn't do just as an individual advocate.
Yes.
So we've been able to get 7 people home that were wrongfully imprisoned.
Wow. That's got to feel good.
It absolutely does. Yes, it does. And we help pass some laws towards preventing wrongful conviction. So I improved identification procedures, videotaping interrogations, and the DNA database expansion.
Oh my gosh.
I became an advisory board member of the coalition group called It Could Happen to You, and we're a statewide entity. And we helped to pass a few more laws in New York, so an oversight board for prosecutors, and also improved what's called discovery reforms, which pertains to the sharing of information between the prosecution and the defense, so it could be automatic. So I did those things that we're active now, not just in New York, but also there's chapter in California and Pennsylvania, which me and the coalition's founder were the only ones in common with all the groups. So I'm involved in the advocacy policy reform in 3 states now.
Wow.
Uh, I want to quickly mention Restorative Justice International. I'm on their global advisory board, so I advise them on wrongful conviction issues and justice issues. So I find that to be meaningful. But after a while, in terms of getting people home, I got tired of sitting in the courtroom as an audience member. I wanted to sit at the defense table and to be able to represent some of the clients. So I made a foray into law school, and
Oh my
so
gosh. You
this
did
past
nonstop.
May, this past May, I graduated uh, Elizabeth Taub School of Law at Pace University, and I passed the bar, and I completed another test. And so there's a couple of minor steps that I'm waiting to. I had to be called for an interview, and then I go register, and then I'll have the law license, and then I'll be a lawyer.
Congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's just got to be. I mean, I just look at you and I'm just like in awe of just your strength and your perseverance and just that you chose not to be angry and you chose to live the rest of your life and you're helping so many other people. So that leads me to my next question is why do you think so many people are wrongfully convicted? When we've got advanced technology now and these DNA systems, why do you think it's still happening?
A number of reasons. So first of all, uh, DNA is not a panacea because it's only available in 5 to 12% of all serious felony cases. So that's at least 88% of the cases cannot be resolved through DNA. So that's one
Wow.
important thing.
Okay.
Then another thing is that the systemic deficiencies that lead to wrongful conviction are still largely unaddressed by most of the state legislatures and also the federal government for the federal cases. So the causes of wrongful conviction, misidentification, which has led to 75% of the wrongful conviction cases in the DNA. And so there are best practices that, most reliable procedures, and that's not implemented, it's not codified into law in most states. There's videotaping interrogation because coerced false confessions, like in my case, has been the cause of wrongful convictions in 25% of the cases. So most states still don't have a law mandating videotaping of interrogations from beginning to end. Even in New York, where I helped pass the law, I mean, the legislature um, they passed it with significant holes in it. I mean, right now, even in New York, and this is an area where the coalition group and I, it could happen to you, are working to close those gaps.
Uh-huh.
In second-degree murder cases, in sex offense cases, or in drug cases, the police are not mandated to record the interrogation. Lying informants at 15%, prosecutorial misconduct. So that was why we passed the board. But that's a factor that runs through many of the wrongful conviction cases. Tunnel vision is another thing. So which is when police and or the prosecutors, when they form a conclusion, the tendency after that just to hold on to that conclusion and to only embrace evidence that supports that and to ignore evidence that is to the contrary, rather than just keeping an open mind and following whichever way the evidence goes. Bad lawyering is another factor. So it's not
Well,
unusual for one public defender to represent 100 people at the same time. Uneven playing field financially and manpower wise between the DA's office and the public defender's office. Equal pay for both sides, I think, is important, and having one statewide system so there could be like an oversight and quality control. So those are all reasons why wrongful convictions, have occurred in the past. A lot of people have been convicted wrongfully just based on junk science, things that appear to be scientific but actually are not, because the error rate is not known. So things like bite marks, tire tracks, footprints,
yeah.
um, bullet lead analysis, even fingerprints, where there is not a consensus where how many points of match there have to be in order for something to actually constitute a match. And then there's forensic fraud, which is, intentional, and so all the rogue law enforcement, so in New
Hold on.
York, there's a,
Forensic fraud?
yes.
What is,
So
how does that happen?
yeah,
I've never even heard of that.
okay. Well, there's a documentary called "How to Fix a Drug Scandal," which I would recommend to your listeners. So what that means is that forensic fraud would mean that the forensic psychologists, instead of them doing a forensic analyst rather, instead of them actually doing a test and giving testimony, just bottom line scientific truth, instead skewering their results. So I mean, there was actually there's been experts who been arrested and gone to prison because they weren't doing tests at all. They were just claiming that they were doing tests and that it matched the defendant, and actually they weren't doing any testing at all. So that's what I mean.
Well,
Rogue law
why wouldn't,
enforcement. Go ahead.
why wouldn't they be doing any testing? Like, what was,
Well, I mean, I think they were trying to help the prosecution, and they wanted to be a star, right? And I think they just lost their way if they ever had it to begin with. Another thing I was going to mention is just rogue law enforcement. So in New York, for example, there was a retired detective named Scarcella, and he used the same drug addict as the sole eyewitness in 7 different homicides. So far, 13, no, sorry, the number I think is up to 16 people that he arrested have been exonerated. And depending on what news account you read, 40, 50, 70 other of his cases are currently under review. Same thing in Illinois, where there was a detective Guevara who, him and his crew, they were forcing confessions and framing people. John Burge as well, the same thing. So giving just those as examples of how one rogue person, can impact potentially hundreds of cases. So that's another reason why wrongful convictions happen.
I mean, it just seems like such a corrupt and backward system.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is, and I've said at I've attended and spoken at some rallies, that have been held, on the issue of criminal justice reform, and I often say, and I wrap up my presentation, I often say, well, I make 2 important points that I consider important. That firstly, that wrongful conviction it has a commonality with police brutality and unjustifiable deadly police force in that it involves police misconduct, and that while we need police reform, we can't forget about the prosecutors either. And let's not forget about wrongful conviction. And we need the honest cops. We need the honest ones in law enforcement. We need the
Yeah.
honest prosecutors to force the other ones out of their profession, because when you know something wrong is going on and you look the other way, you're not an innocent bystander. You're complicit now.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back real quick because you had mentioned when your case was going on and you were still behind bars, you had mentioned Judge Janine Pirro
Yes.
in charge at the time. I want to talk about her because obviously she's on the news all the time. She's got a show
Yes.
and all that. Um, why was she was like withholding, or she wasn't allowing
She
stuff?
wouldn't. Yeah, I'll explain. So, firstly, her office fought me in all 7 of my appeals. I remember one time when my lawyer was arguing that the DNA proved I was innocent. Right, that was in my first appeal, and her office argued that, well, a negative DNA test result is no insulation to a guilty verdict. They made that argument. Yeah, you heard that right. Another time,
Yeah.
I tried to get further testing, and she refused to allow me to have the testing. She fought me then in federal court. When my lawyer got the wrong information on the filing procedure, and as a result of that, my petition arrived 4 days late. Her office took the position that they asked the court to simply rule that I was late and not even get to my issues, and that's what the court did.
What do you think the motivation behind that was? Why?
I think just preserve convictions no matter what. I feel like that was part of it. And, often, I mean, she was very political and she was always eyeing higher office, and a lot of times people cite, their conviction rates and how many cases they win. And remember, while she might not have been in office when I was convicted, she did take over before my appeal was decided. So, the people involved in my prosecution, the prosecutor was still in her office afterwards. They were still using that medical examiner as an expert. So I think that, trying to protect her inherited staff, I think that was an aspect of it as well.
I mean, it's insane because and
I mean, she's this bastion of civil rights and due process to hear her tell it on TV. But when she was actually the district attorney, she had her hands on the levers of power, was she talking all that stuff then? Was she, what did she do? She certainly wasn't that way in my case. And 2 other people, like, Keon Katibi, Selwyn Days, they were also other people who were wrongfully convicted on her watch that later on have been exonerated. But I also would like to take focus on another public figure that was involved in my case and keeping everything going. When I lost in federal court because my paperwork arrived late, um, I challenged that ruling at the Federal Court of Appeals, and one of the judges that upheld that ruling was a U.S. Supreme Court justice who would like the world to believe that she's very empathetic. That would be none other than U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She upheld that ruling twice. To her, it was okay that I didn't get a chance to have my innocence argument based on the DNA looked at, that I didn't get to have my argument that the interrogation which produced the coerced false confession, that was obtained in violation of my Fifth Amendment rights.
God,
I didn't get a chance to have a court rule on that, and she was okay with that. To
it just
this day, go ahead.
because you hear it, and these two were mentioned, but there's a lot. And another one that has been accused of withholding information to free people and to prove they're innocent is Kamala Harris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I've been very critical. I've been very critical of her
Yeah.
as well. So her office wrongfully convicted. To quickly recap, her office wrongfully convicted 5 people a separate case, Kevin Cooper, a death row inmate, was prevented from getting DNA testing by her while she was in charge. Remember that there was a scandal in the lab, and that came to her attention, and she looked the other way, where there was an issue about whether or not the lab was doing legitimate testing, whether they were following correct protocols. She didn't investigate and do anything. There was another scandal in which the government was using informants in the jail to interact with prisoners who were in jail awaiting trial. When you've been charged and you're represented by an attorney, they're not allowed to speak to you. So that was a violation of the Sixth Amendment right. So, she was aware of that and did nothing. Her office fought payment. That was the name of an article that her office fought payments. They fought against payments being made to people who are exonerated as well. So she has this terrible
Oh,
record on wrongful conviction, and it seems that other than when Tulsi Gabbard brought it up when she was running for president, there was a few articles, but since then, it doesn't seem like that issue is getting much currency anymore. The media is not talking about it. I guess it's okay that she did that, and everybody's being asked to hold their nose and vote for her anyway, right? All in the name of a political agenda. But I really don't care who's in office. I'm about criminal justice reform, period. And if somebody is involved in wrongful conviction, I'm not voting for them, and I'm airing out their record. And I don't care what political party it is or what the outcome of that is going to be, because I don't believe anyone should be in a position of trust, that had a hand in all of those things. And if that causes people to be upset with me, hey, that it is what it is. I'm a truth teller, period. I'm not looking the other way. Too many people looked the other
of
way
course
when
they.
I was wrongfully in prison.
Yeah, and those people
Yeah,
that would judge you or do look at that like, oh, why would you say that? Like, hello, you lived it. It took away
yeah,
2
exactly.
years of your.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
You
You know,
are
and
allowed to have an opinion, and it's like, it doesn't matter what political party they're affiliated with. There are super evil Democrats and there are super evil Republicans. What needs
yes,
to change is forget about the political party, forget about the candidate, is that this whole kind of reform, this whole like kind of
yes.
prison reform, and there's things being done now, but to stop robbing people of of their innocence, you know?
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And criminal justice reform does not belong to any one party. It's a
No.
nonpartisan thing. Everyone should be united on that. Innocent people should not be wrongfully convicted. All these deficiencies in the system by which innocent people can be convicted need to be addressed. We have so many other criminal justice reform issues not related to innocence that are very important. For example, I mean, prison reform and parole reform. So many people who have done their time already, and they're different people than they were 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, are routinely denied parole, even though they're rehabilitated, all in the name of what the crime was in the first place. But that was known on the first day. As a country, do we not believe in rehabilitation anymore? And prisoner reentry, and healthcare in prison is terrible. I mean, I saw somebody die. I saw somebody die. I remember I was walking in the cell gallery, and he was coming back from medical, and he seemed to be sweating, working just to walk. And I said, "Yo, you okay?" And he said, "Yo, I feel like I'm dying, but I said, well, why don't you go and get medical attention?" And he told me, "Yeah, I did. I went over there, and they told me nothing was wrong, and gave me a couple of Tylenols and told me come back in the morning." And he died of a heart attack that night in his cell. So that I still remember that. And I remember it taking months to get to see a doctor. It's the medical care. I mean, elderly people in prison, with advanced medical needs, geriatric needs, not able to get the treatment they need, while they were there. I mean, I've seen people who are literally being pushed around in a wheelchair or hunched over or bedridden or on dialysis, and being denied parole because suppose I've read some of the decisions. Sometimes the decision said your release would not be compatible with society's safety of society. I mean, it would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. So, those issues and college education for prisoners as a very serious crime-fighting tool, insofar as prisoners who are educated, they're much less likely to recidivate. They'll be equipped to get gainful employment. Do we want people released with no education? A stigma of just a record, hard to get employment, and no education to boot. I mean, they're likely to go back to the old ways, and that means, as a society, that we're paying money to incarcerate them rather than paying into the tax base. It means we're going to have another victim. It means there's going to be more money spent in the legal system. So I have a big issue when it comes to that. I mean, ban the box. I mean, some colleges, they require people applying to college to disclose if they have a criminal record. I mean, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, to me, if someone's applying
Put
for
it that way,
college,
yeah.
if they're applying to college, it sounds to me like they're trying to go straight. Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
we can just let them in, and however they're going to pay for it, and not denying them educational opportunity, because of that. So the discrimination when it comes, the similar issue when it comes to employment, so the discrimination there. I mean,
Right,
so there's
right.
all these different things that I saw, things that most of us would never ever want to hear or see, but I did see, and I am permanently affected, and I can't forget, and I won't forget. And I'm going to fight for all these changes, in addition to the spearheading the innocence work. And I get passionate about all of these things because
Yeah.
if we're really indeed have the best system in the world, well, can we try to live up to that? Can we actually make good on the things that we say, and we're
Yeah.
better than this? And so I do this advocacy work, and I make sense of everything that happened to me by knowing, not believing, but by knowing I'm in the world to do this type of work. And this is what I eat, sleep, breathe this all day, holidays, everything. And I believe I'm here to do this work, and I believe that to some extent I'm making a difference, and plenty of people that I
Yeah.
collaborate with, and I'm gonna do it until I die. This is me.
Oh, well,
So
good for, I mean, you have really just taken such a shitty situation and turned it into something amazing where you're positively impacting people's lives. But before we go, I have to ask you, because this is a big relevant thing. When
yes.
coronavirus hit, um,
Mhm.
they just started letting all the prisoners out of jail. We had
I
like
think well I
murderers
think
on the street.
Well, I think that that's somewhat. I think that that's exaggerated, because there's a lot of people that is a complaint that a lot of advocacy groups have, is that the prisons are not employing social distancing and other safeguards. There's been complaints that the sanitizers and masks haven't been provided, and that some of the staff are coming in and out of the prisons without that, and that there are people that can be safely released, like the elderly people I talked about, people who have compromised medical system. I think if somebody is a year or two away from going to the parole board, I don't think that an extra year or two of incarceration is going to make much of a difference in
Yeah.
terms of rehabilitation. So I do believe, and certainly people who are there for nonviolent offenses, I do believe they can be safely let out. And I feel like those other safety protocols that I mentioned, should be implemented. The punishment for committing a crime is the loss of your freedom. It's not to get a de facto death sentence because they're not putting proper medical protocols, and it's certainly not to be abused and mistreated while they're in prison or afterwards. And if we do that anyway in the name of the offense that they committed, then in a larger sense, are we as a society, are we any better than them? Then if we're going to mistreat them and go in those ways there, are we any better than them?
Oh,
So
seriously.
that's how I see it.
Yeah.
But I'll just want to make another quick point that, all of this stuff is about accuracy and justice and fairness. I do have some colleagues, that are police officers now, and for the last 6 years, I've gone into police academies in New Jersey, co-teaching the ethics program, and I have been welcomed by some prosecutorial groups where I've spoken in front of, and groups of judges, and this isn't against them. It is against rogue cops. It is against prosecutors that are breaking the law. It is against judges who are not being fair. But as far as people in those professions that are doing, are honest and are following the rules, I mean, I have no issues with any of them. So I just want to clarify that. And hey, look, I was a crime victim. I mean, I think what the police did to me was illegal, but the actual person who killed the victim in my case, he impacted me. He was content for me to do time for his crime. He didn't say anything. So I'm certainly not in favor of anybody, getting away with crimes. And there were people
Yeah.
in prison that I saw there that I would not want to see, out on the street. But I think that each case, each person, is worthy of an objective review, and the people that are rehabilitated should be let out, and the people that are not should not be. That's where I stand.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us, and I think this is going
Absolutely.
to open a lot of people's eyes of kind of what really is going on, and not be so quick to judge all the time. And if you're having a hard
Well, I'm hoping that also leads people to look into more. I'm hoping that this leads to, between, this podcast and other interviews I've been doing in general and in connection with conviction and, just the innocence work in general. I'm hoping that, this does help to spark a national dialogue on criminal justice reform, and people do look into the
absolutely.
issues more and, take those steps, which, on whatever level, being whatever steps they can take, towards working on these issues. I mean, even if it's just indirectly, even if it's writing an article or having a podcast episode or writing a blog or doing some research or holding showing documentaries or movies on wrongful conviction. And these are just, if not doing like a career, I mean, or even writing articles about things. Some people maybe listen, maybe in the future they become lawyers, or they become cops who play it straight, or they become investigators, or maybe somebody might be inspired to do a different career in this space. Certainly, there's room for people doing websites and policy work and grant writing and fundraising and other essential aspects of organization, or help people on the back end of things. I mean, there's not enough psychologists or social workers to help people reintegrate. So there's that facet of it. So there's lots of different ways for people to get involved. But we need everyone to get involved, to do something, anything. I mean, contact your elected officials and insist on change. And people that are against reforms, vote for their opponents. Register to vote. Don't get out of go on the jury duty. Don't get out of it. Go there and insist that the prosecution actually prove their case. And if they do, you vote guilty. But if they don't prove it, then you vote not guilty. If you think the defendant did it, but they didn't prove it, that means you err on the side of caution and you vote not guilty. That's the law. But many of us don't do that. We get out of jury duty, and we need to change all those things. So we need lots of space for everybody, including researchers, lots of ways to help, but we need everybody, all hands on deck.
Yes, absolutely. So where can they find you and help
Yes,
kind of your
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So first of all, they could go to the website, www.deskovic, deskovic.org, and go to the website there. There is a mechanism whereby they can email me that way. I do have social media following, so I have a LinkedIn profile. I have a Facebook page, not just a personal page, but also a public figure page. So if people want to keep up with me and my advocacy work, I'm always posting my interviews and others events that I'm speaking at, etc. So that's another way that another way they can catch up with me.
this is all
Uh,
under Jeff Deskovic?
Jeffrey Deskovic. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And look, maybe some of the people that are, I mean, we do have a crowdfunding site on Patreon, so people can help me spread the word about that. I mean, that would really be helpful. Always looking for donors. And I need more than I need donors, but my challenge is that I arrived where I am, without coming up in business 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So I need people who can be like a connector between me and other people that this cause speaks to, who can help it move it forward in one way or another. Donor, board member, someone with a skill, lots of ways to help out. And so I do hope that, people help in one way or another, because at the end of the day, here's the situation, right? Is I'm home. I'm free. This isn't about me anymore. This is about the men and women that metaphorically left behind. I'm working hard, I'm trying, but I can't do it all. I can't do it all alone. I need lots of people to help me in many different ways. And I hope people can be inspired by my story, but that inspiration leads them to take steps within their power on whatever level that I've just mentioned, help in one way or another.
Well, this is amazing. And you guys, if you want more information, please go to deskovic.org. All the information
Yes.
will be on our website at nexttomadison.com, where you can watch the episode, listen to the episode, link to all his social media profiles, his website as well, so you can get involved. There are so many innocent people that are like Jeff, but are still behind bars, and we do need to make changes. And if this kind of speaks passion to you and you want to get out and help, then do something, because we all need it. Everybody is here to help each other and to be kind to each other, and just to make the world a better place for all of us. So thank you, Jeff, for sharing your amazing story. And I am just in awe of you and your strength, and just your perseverance is amazing. And know that you're an inspiration for so many people. And you guys, at home or in the car or at the gym or wherever you may be, thanks for listening to another episode of Next to Madison. And we'll see you guys next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.